Okay, so now we're going to implement Bootstrap modals, and we're also going to expire the session using Angular. So really quick, this is what a Bootstrap modal is. It comes with Bootstrap. It's this neat little effect that pops up, and it's not like the typical annoying pop-ups. This one's a little bit smoother, and there's a few different ones. I particularly like this one. And so if you just search Bootstrap modals in Google, you'll come to this w3schools.com website that basically you can just copy and paste and implement it. And so yeah, let's get started. So first, for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to go into my API, my routes, and I'm going to find the authenticate route, and I'm going to change the token to expire after, let's say, 15 seconds, or I'll even do 5 seconds, right? So if you set it to 5 seconds and then you log in, watch what happens. After those 5 seconds elapse, you're still logged in and you're still viewing the page. However, if you refresh, it logs you out, or if you click on a different route, what it does is the user object no longer exists. So you're still logged in, but there's no user object, so everything's empty until you refresh or hit log out, okay? Now what I want to do is prevent that, okay? So we need a way to check the token while the user is logged in, right, to see if it expired. One way to do that is using Angular's intervals. So what we'll do is let's go into the public app controllers, and then we'll go into main controller. This is the main controller that's kind of running the whole login thing, right? So what we'll do is down here when the user logs in, right? Right here where it says success, we're going to run a function to check if the if the session is expired. Okay, so let's go ahead and create that session up here, right? We'll name it we'll say app.check session. Okay, so then when the user logs in, we'll go ahead and run that. We'll say check session, and then when the page loads, also, because if you hit refresh, then this function is no longer going to work because this is only running after the user presses this. But if they refresh the page, then the controller reloads. So we also want to have it here in the open scope. So we'll say app.check session. Okay. Now we only want to do this if the user is logged in. So we'll say if auth.isLoggedIn is true, then run this. Otherwise, it's going to fail because, of course, it'll be expired because it doesn't exist. Okay. So another thing that we want to do, right? We also want to run this when the user changes the route. Okay. So this is our root scope route change start. So what we can do is implement it here, right? But we'll need a variable. So what we'll do is we'll say, if the user is logged in, then we'll set a variable. We'll name it, we'll say checking session equals true. Okay. And so on each route change, what we'll do is we'll say if app.checking session is not true, then we'll run that check. Okay. So basically every time you go to a new route, it's going to check, okay, are we checking for the expiration of the token? If not, if it hasn't been initiated, then initiate it. Otherwise, just let it run, okay? And so what we'll do now is we'll create that variable for the interval. We'll say interval function. Okay, now don't forget to pass this interval up here. And then after the bracket there, you wanna include how often you want to do this check. So I'll say every 2 seconds, right? Once I'm done with this, I obviously don't want to check to see if the user is if their session has expired every 2 seconds. I'll do maybe something more reasonable, maybe every 10 minutes or something, right? But for right now, I'm going to do that. And so just to show you really quick what this looks like, I'm just going to do this right. I'm just going to log a test and show you what this looks like. So go ahead and hit save and then hit refresh and then log in, right? Once login becomes true, you'll start to notice that it's logging that test to the console every 2 seconds, right? And this is true even if you change the route. And then once you're logged out and you hit refresh, it's no longer doing that check. Okay, so basically what we're doing with that is once the user logs in, we're checking their token to see if it expires. So let's say you want the user's token only to last, say, an hour, then you can check it every 10 minutes or something to see if it's expired. And once it reaches expire time, then you could log them out or give them the option to renew their session. So we need a way now to check the token, right, to see how much time it has left. So what we can do is if you go into your services and go into your authentication services, we can use something that we already used before, right, which was right here, the window local storage get token. So go ahead and copy that and then paste that right here, and you can actually get rid of that test. And go ahead and assign it to a variable because we're going to use that. Okay, so now it's important to note that when the user's session expires, once that token expires, it's removed from the client or the browser storage. So therefore, this becomes null. So we don't want to continue if this is null, otherwise it's going to be for nothing. So what we want to do is we want to say if token is equal to null. And what we'll do is if it's null, we'll cancel this interval, right? So we'll say interval.cancel interval. And so what that does is once the token finally expires and it gets to this portion, rather than continuously check the session, you don't need to. Once it expires, you don't need to keep checking. So that's what this is. It catches it. Once it's null, once it expires, then we cancel the interval and we stop checking. Okay. So now what we need to do is grab that token and convert it to timestamp. Okay. And so this is the code for that. I'm not going to spend too much time explaining it, but basically this is Angular's way of taking a JSON web token, which is what we're using, and converting it. Okay. It's kind of a little bit complicated how it works. But basically what it does, it just converts that token time to timestamp so that we can compare it to local time or current time. Okay. And so what I've done is I've turned it into a function so that we can take this token and pass it into that function and then convert it to timestamp. Okay, that way we can determine how much time is left on the token. Okay, so if you need to, go ahead and pause the video at this time and copy this code. And so then what we can do below is we can assign that new converted token to a variable. So we'll say expire time, right? And we'll say self dot parse and then token. Okay, so what this is doing here is it's taking the token that we got from the local storage, which is set when the user logs in. We pass it into the function to convert it to timestamp. Okay, and if you don't know what timestamp is, it's pretty simple. Just Google it really quick if you need to. But I'm going to log it to the console just so you can see what it looks like. So go ahead and create a console log, and we'll say expire time. Now it's going to log the entire token object, so what you need to do is type in exp afterwards. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Go ahead and hit save. Make sure you refresh, hit login. Okay, and there's our timestamp, and it's logging it every 2 seconds. Okay, and so this indicates when the token is going to expire, and it's based on whatever you assign in the API, right? So I assigned 5 seconds here. And so there's converters online if you need to convert this. It translates to a month, day, and year, okay, and time, all the way down to seconds. So what we need to do now is get the current time, okay, and subtract that from this to see how much time is remaining in the user session, okay. So going back to the main controller, right below here, actually right here, what we'll do is we'll create the variable for the current time. We'll say time stamp. And so this is how you convert the date object in JavaScript to timestamp. You just divide it by 1,000. So this is the exact method for that. So go ahead and pause the video if you need to copy that right now. And so what we'll do is we'll divide that date object by 1,000 to get the seconds, and then assign it to the timestamp. And so right below here, we'll log the timestamp to see what that looks like. So hit save on that, and then hit refresh, and then try to log in. And you'll notice now that it's logging the token and then the current time, right? Now you'll notice the token, the 016 in my case, will stay the same. That's because the token isn't changing, but the second one is changing every 2 seconds, right? Because we're running the interval every 2 seconds. So every 2 seconds, it's logging the current timestamp, and it's increasing by 2 every 2 seconds, of course, right? And so what we want to do is subtract whatever the expiration is from the timestamp to determine, okay, this is when the token expires, okay? And so the way we do that is we subtract the expire time .exp minus timestamp, okay? And so what we do, we'll assign this to a variable, we'll name it, say, time check, okay? And so let's log time check, right? And I'm just gonna enter here time check. And then before I show you what that looks like, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna increase my expiration time to 10 seconds just so you can get a little bit better, a little bit more time frame or window to actually look at the results. So go ahead and hit save and then hit refresh and then log in and see what you get. Okay, so now here's the time check, and it's decreasing every 2 seconds, right? And so basically what that is time until expire, right? So between the time that I log in and refresh the page, the 10 seconds is counting down, okay? By the time the interval starts, it's already at 6 seconds, 4 seconds, 2 time to expire, 0 seconds. And then by the negatives, that means the token has already expired, right? And so the first time check really just depends on how fast your connection is. And so what I'll do is I'm going to initiate a condition here. I'll say if time check is less than or equal to, we'll say 10 seconds. I'll say console log token will expire in 10 seconds. Else token not yet expired. Actually, what I'll do is I'll set this as 0. If it's less than or equal to 0, then token has expired. Whoops, token has expired. Okay, and then I'm going to change this back to 5 seconds just because I don't want to delay it too long, otherwise it'll take a little while. So I'll go ahead and hit save on that, and then log out and hit refresh and log back in so you can get that token. So on each interval, it's checking that token, right? And so on the first round, it says not yet expired. And then on the second one, it says it has expired, right? I set it to 5 seconds, right? So if I changed it to 10 seconds, then this not yet expired will run a few more times, right? So what you can do with this is kind of manipulate it to check how often you want it to, right? You can first set how long you want the token to last. Maybe you only want it to last like 15 minutes, kind of like some bank websites have, right? And then you can check it every, say, 10 seconds or 5 seconds. It's not too troublesome because the burden isn't on the server, it's on the client. So you can check it as much time as you want. Your server's not going crazy with resources, right? So I'd recommend maybe checking every 10 or 20 seconds, or I'm just going to do 30 seconds on mine. That's up to you. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is when it expires, we actually want to cancel out the interval and stop it, right? So we'll, just like above, we'll say cancel interval. And let's just make sure that actually happens. So go ahead and hit refresh and log back in. Okay, and then you'll see right here, once it expires, the check no longer keeps running, right? Because you don't need to, you already know expired. And make sure that when you click on a different route and when you refresh, it's also performing that, okay? So like when you first log in, after you get to initial page, hit refresh or go to a different route and make sure that check still initializes. If it doesn't, that means you made an error here in the controller of where you placed the code, okay? Just fix this up a bit here. Okay, so now what we're gonna move on to is the model. And so right here on the W3 website, go ahead and click on their first example. Okay, and this is what it looks like. We're going to copy this code, right? So all the way from the container all the way down. Go ahead and copy that. And so what you'll need to do is paste this in your index. And the reason for doing that is because we want this model to be available at all times. Because basically what we're going to do with it is when the user's session is about to expire, whatever you're choosing is, maybe 10 minutes before or 5 minutes, this model is going to pop up on the screen asking them if they want to continue or log out. Okay. So go ahead and paste it underneath your ng view. And then give your page a refresh to make sure that it's there, okay? It doesn't matter which route you're on, it should still be there. And then give it a click and make sure that it comes up, okay? Now we're not gonna have this there, so what we need to do is just delete this header and the button. Okay, we don't need that. And we don't really even need this container here, so you can delete that as well. And so now when you hit refresh, there's nothing there, but it's hidden, okay? And so what we're gonna do is in the controller, we're gonna activate this, okay? So what I wanna do with this is, first I'm gonna change this to primary. I'm gonna add a second button. And this one's gonna be danger. The first one's gonna be yes, and the second one's gonna be no, okay? And so basically what this is, and I'm going to ask, when the model pops up, we're going to ask the user, hey, do you want to continue? And they'll either hit yes, no, or they can cancel. Now, if they're canceled, then we'll automatically just make that no, okay? And so what we need to do is add ng clicks to these, right? So let's go ahead and add it right here. So this class right here, the one where it says close data dismiss, this is if the user clicks the X, right? I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So this X right here, that's the cancel, okay? So we want to add a function to that. So if the user clicks that, it logs them out rather than continuing them to be logged in, right? So hit ng, we'll say click, the name of our controller, and then we'll name it end session, right? We haven't created this yet, but we will. And we'll use the same one down here. Except for the yes button will be renew session. And again, we haven't created that yet, but we will. And so for the header of it, okay, so this is the header and then this is the body. Rather than having this predetermined text, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the controller control it. Just so that we can change this in the future if we need to. So I'll say model, sorry, I gotta call the controller first. So main.model title. or maybe a header. Okay, and then same thing here. I'll say main.modal body. Okay, so now let's go ahead and go into our controller. So we actually need a way to activate that model now that we got rid of the button. Now, if you go to right in the same Bootstrap model web section on this website, if you go down to the very bottom and click Bootstrap JS model reference, there's a list of additional options that you can implement. And this is also where you can see that example that I showed you before, the nice little login window right here. It's pretty neat. But anyway, on that same website, there's a few options that we can use. And the one I'm looking for is this one, trigger via JavaScript, right? And so I'm also going to pass in this backdrop and set it to static. So basically what that means is when the pop-up appears, the user cannot click the background to cancel it. And we don't want that. I mean, we do want that. We don't want the user to be able to click out or anything, right? So what we can do is click right here, it says using JS, and this is what it looks like. Okay, and so you can't click on the background, you can't close it, but with the regular one, you can. And so we don't want that. We want the user to either choose yes or no about in regards to logging in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy it from here, which is this one right here. Okay, so next let's create a function to make the model appear. So we'll name it show model. And then I will paste that here. Don't forget to get rid of this 3 because it has to match the name of the class that we have in the index, which is just my model. Or rather the ID, not the class. So once that's done, we want to go ahead and implement, if you remember in the index, I had these here that I'm going to assign in the controller. So we'll just do that now, right? So it's model body and model header. So in that function, we'll say app.model header and then app.model body. So for the header, I'll say time out warning. And then for the body, I'll say your session will expire in, let's say, 5 minutes. Would you like to remain, let's say, would you like to renew your session? Right, you can change that to say whatever you want. Just using that for right now. Okay, so we just have one last thing to do. Right here where the token expires, we'll go ahead and implement that, right? So we'll say show model and pass that in there, okay? So let's see what this looks like. Go ahead and hit refresh and then log back in. And then just let the token expire, and then you should see the model pop up there, okay? So now what we need to do is, and make sure you test that you can't click on the background, you can't click escape or any other form here, okay? Now we're still gonna log out the user even if there is a way that they figure out to bypass this. We're still gonna log them out, but just we wanna lock it just to make it user friendly. Now what we need to do now is add functionality to this yes and to this no. Okay, yes being reset their token with a new expiration date, and then no, log them out. Okay, so if you recall in the index we created those two already, right? One was renew session and one was end session. So let's go ahead and create those now. Right below our model we'll say app.renew session, then app.end session. And so for right now, what we'll do is we'll log to the console on each. We'll say session has been renewed. And here we'll say session has ended. So go ahead and hit save, refresh, and just log back in. Actually, I don't think you even have to log back in. And just make sure that when you press those buttons, the appropriate action is taken. Session has been renewed. And then make sure you hit refresh and test out the no as well. Okay, session has ended. Now, one thing to address here is you'll notice if the user doesn't click anything, nothing happens. What most websites do is they give you a timer on when you can actually, before you have to take action, or else you're forcefully logged out. So what we can do is we can use a variable, right? And so what we'll do, we'll say right here we'll say app.choiceMade equals true, and we'll set it to true here as well. And then when the model first comes up, we'll set it to false. Okay. And then right here we'll say timeout, pass in a function, and we'll say after 2 seconds for right now. Well, actually, that's probably too fast. Let's say 4. And we'll say if app.choiceMade is not true, then for right now we'll just say logged out. Okay, so let's test this. Go ahead and hit refresh. And then don't take action for the 4 seconds, and you should see that console log there, okay? Now we want to take this a little bit further and ensure that we close this out. So going back to the, which website is here? Okay, these are all the methods that you can use. So we'll use the modal hide. Okay, so going back to the controller right here, we'll create a new function. We'll name it hide modal. Whoops, did not mean to do that. Okay, and then you can just copy the same one up here. Only you don't need this backdrop here. And then pass in that hide. Whoops. And so in the same timeout here, we'll pass that in there. We'll say hide modal. So go ahead and hit save, refresh, and make sure that happens. After the 4 seconds, this should go away. All right, and there we go. So now we can move on. Okay, and then we just need to do the same thing up here for the renew session, as well as the end session. Okay, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna use this model for 2 things, right? We're gonna use it, 1, to let the user know their session has expired, and 2, to log the user out, okay? Because we have a logout button right now, but it's not really that appealing, so we'll just use modal for that, okay? And so what we'll do is right here in the show model, we'll have 2 options, right? So what we need to do is pass in any variable up here. I'll just name it X. You can change it to option or whatever you want. I'll just use X for right now. And I'll say, actually I'll say option just so it makes sense. So I'll say if option is equal to 1, then do all of this. Else if option is equal to 2, then we'll do the logout portion. Okay. And so what you need to make sure you do here is for the show model, now you have to pass in an option. So we'll say 1 for this one. Okay. Because this is the one where it's letting them know that it expired. Okay. And then right here at the top, I'm going to go ahead and take these two and set them to false. Okay, and just go ahead and save and make sure that that's all still working like it's supposed to. Alrighty. And make sure that both times when you hit no and yes, it closes out that window. Okay, so let's go ahead and implement the logout. Okay, so right now our logout function looks like this. So let's go ahead and change that. Okay. I'm actually going to remove all of this. Instead, I'm just going to use that show model and pass in the 2 option this time. Okay, and 2 is what we, this is our second option right here, the logout portion, right? So the first thing that we're going to want to do is first we're going to set the header and the body here, right? So we'll say app.modelHeader is set to logging out. Okay, and then actually we have to copy this as well, otherwise it's not going to show. So go ahead and make sure you paste it below the variable, otherwise it'll pop up without the variable first. And then this timeout function here, let's actually cut that out and paste it outside the scope here. Okay. And then up here for the header and body, let's actually change this to undefined. That way we make sure that it's blank. Okay. So go ahead and hit save and then test this out. Just hit that logout button and you should see this window pop up now. Now we want to get rid of those 2 buttons. So we can create a new variable. We'll name it hide buttons. Set it to false. And we set it to, actually let's change this to hide button. And we'll set it to true for option 2. Okay. And so back in the index, we'll hide these 2 buttons whenever that's true. So we'll say ng hide if main.hide buttons is true. Same thing here. ng hide if main.hide button is true. So hit save on that and then hit the logout button again. And you shouldn't see any buttons anymore. Now ignore this. That's just happening because of our timer. So going back to the main controller, let's go ahead and change this expiration of the token just so it doesn't keep interfering when we want to test it. So we'll set it to 1 hour or something, and then once you log back in, I'm sorry, actually the logout is disabled right now, but let's go ahead and change that right now. So go back into the main controller. And so what we'll do is right below here, we'll create a timeout function to log the user out, right? And we'll basically log them out after 2 seconds, right? So the way this is going to work is the model's going to pop up saying logging out, and we're going to just display that for 2 seconds, and then we're going to redirect them to the home page. So we'll do the auth.logout and make sure you've passed that up here, which it is. Where was I? Right here, okay. Then we'll redirect to the home page. and then we'll hide the model. And in case they're already on the home page, we want to refresh the controller, the page, so that the user's logged out. So we'll say route.reload. Oops. And then make sure to pass this up here as well. Okay. So now I want to do one last thing. If you search in Google CSS3 loading animations, you click on this first link here, there's a bunch of really cool animations that are really easy to just copy and paste pretty much. And so I stole this one right here. I think it looks pretty cool, so we'll go ahead and steal this, okay? And so what you can do is just copy this CSS code and then copy the div here and paste it in your index, right? So we'll paste it inside the model. We'll say right next to or right below the paragraph. Okay. And then we'll only show it if the buttons are hidden, right? Because we know that if the buttons are hidden, then that means the user's logging out, right? So we'll say ng-show main.hide button. Then I'm gonna go ahead and back and copy all of this CSS. And then I'm gonna go into my custom CSS file. Let's see, where am I here? Assets, CSS, and then style.css. And then I'll just paste it somewhere up here. Okay. One last thing that I want to add is make sure you add this margin auto just to center this this spinning icon. So let's see what this looks like. Go back to your page and hit refresh and then log in. Once there, go ahead and hit that logout button. Okay, and you'll see a nice little animation there before it logs the user out, right? So now the last thing that's left for us to do is we want to give them that option to reset their token, okay? So now that we've got that animation taken care of, let's go back into the controller. What we can do is we can remove this console log. We don't need it anymore. And then let's go back into the API and set this back to, say, 5 seconds, just so that we can test it. Okay. So now what we need to do is create a route that handles the resetting of the token. So go back into your API file, and let's go to the very bottom and create a new one, right? So we'll do it after the middleware, because this is a route that requires the user to be logged in, right? Everything that doesn't require the user to be logged in should be placed before the middleware, and everything that requires the user to be logged in should be placed after the middleware. So we'll say router.get, and we'll name this one, let's say renew token. Okay, and we'll pass in username, function request response. Okay, we're going to find a user using the username from the request params username. Okay, then we're going to execute this function that gives us either an error or a user. If error, throw error. If no user is found, then spawn with JSON. Now this part will usually never happen, but in case it does, we'll prepare for it. So we'll say message error. Actually, I don't want that. I meant to put no user was found. Okay, else. So what we need to do here is give them a new token. So if you go back to the authentication route, the route when they log in, we can just use this same one, right? So let's just copy these two right here. And paste it there. So this one, I'll set it to 24 hours. We don't need a message for this one. And I'm actually going to name this token new token. Okay, so what we're doing here is once the user presses that yes, it's going to make a call to this endpoint. It's going to search the database for whatever user is currently logged in. And if it finds that user, then it's going to give them a whole new token and keep them logged in. And then we're going to send it back to the controller. Okay. So go ahead and copy that route name because we're going to use it in a second. So go into your user services. We're going to create a new one. So user factory dot, we'll say renew session function. And then I'm going to paste this there. So we'll say return http.get/API/ copy this plus username. And I'll pass that here. So that will look like this. User dot with the username. Okay, so let's copy that and use it in our controller now. So let's go to our function that we created. Where's it at? Right here, our renew session. So what we'll do is we'll create the token here, right? So just paste that here, right? What I'll do is, so for our username object, when the user logs in, we're already grabbing this, right? So you'll see that right here. Okay, so we already have a username. We should, if the user's logged in and we're successfully grabbing their data, then we should already have this variable to use, right? So we can just use this same one. Okay, so I'm just going to paste that in here. And I'll say then function data. Okay. Now, two things are going to come as a result of this. Either one, it'll work, and then we can reset the token, or it won't. So we'll say if data.success is true, else we'll give them an error message. We'll say app.modal body, and we'll set message. Now, there's no reason why this should ever happen. We're just preparing for it just in case, but the user shouldn't even get to this portion if they're not logged in. So theoretically, this should never happen. Okay, so now what we need to do is go into our authentication service, and we're going to use the same function that we used to set the token in the first place, right? So we're going to go ahead and use this one right here, okay? And we're going to set that right here. So instead of token, it's going to be data.data.token, right? Because that's what we're getting back from the data object, okay, from JSON. Once that's done, once we've set the token again, but this time with a 24-hour time limit, once we've done that, then we need to initiate the checking of the session once again, okay? So what we'll do is, where was I? Okay, right here, yeah, just below. Reinitiate that. Can delete this console log. Okay, and then since we use this user, we have to actually go back up here and pass that up here as well, right? And then as a dependency up here as well, so we'll say user services. Okay, so now let's do this, right? Let's go back into the API, and when the user logs in, let's give them a longer token, right? Let's say, we'll say 30 seconds. And then we'll give them the pop-up message at 25 seconds. So inside the controller right here, we'll say less than or equal to 25, then give us the pop-up. Okay. And where were we? Okay, right here. And then, okay, yeah, also pass, you got to pass this in as well. Don't forget that. So go ahead and hit save on this, and then let's test this out. Go ahead and log in. Oh, refresh first and then hit login, and then let the pop-up come up. Okay, and then try to hit that yes on there. Okay, and then you'll see that you're not logged out. And now if you look at the timer, it's reset now to 86,000, which is basically like somewhere between 23 hours and 24 hours, right? So that's how you do that. Once they hit that yes, they're resetting their token without having to log out, and they don't have to lose their progress or wherever they're at on the page. Okay. So now the last thing to do is we need to implement the function for the no button, right? So when you log in and the pop-up comes, pressing that no right now doesn't do anything, but we need to set it to actually log out the user. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that right now. Let's see, where are we? Okay, right here is the end session, so we just need to add that logout function. So if you recall, our logout is, where is it? The second option here for the show model, so we'll just use that same one. Okay, we'll say, well actually let me delete this console log, and then below here I'll say I'll create a timeout function so they have some time. So we'll say function, and then this one I'll set to 1 second, and then I'll say show model option 2. Okay, hit save on that, and then go ahead and log out and refresh. Hit that login button, and then wait for that pop-up window to come. And then hit no, and it should log you out. Okay, and there it is. And that's why I implemented the 1 second delay, because there's two models popping up, so you want to have like just a time break in between both. Otherwise, it would be really abrupt. Okay. One thing I did forget to mention is make sure that you test out the X as well. So right here, make sure you press that X and make sure that it does still log out the user. Okay. Now you can have the logout loading last a little bit longer if you really want the function to show. But I'm fine with just the 2 seconds. You can even do 3 seconds, whatever you feel is right. Additionally, one last thing that I forgot to have you check is make sure you check the social media logins, because once you get redirected back, it should be logging, rather periodically checking to see if the user's token is expired. Okay, so just make sure that you have that functionality working at all times. Now, this concludes the tutorial. You can take this a step further if you want to and implement the other login, this pop-up model if you want for the login. However, just for the sake of this tutorial, it would have been taken too long to replace this, so I was just fine with that. So thanks for watching.